Death's End, originally released in China on November 2010, is Liu Cixin's third and final novel within the Remembrance of Earth's Past trilogy. Is Death's End the best book in said trilogy? Well, my name is The Advocate, and today I'm an advocate for answering just that. Like, comment, and subscribe to support a small channel. So analyzing whether this book is the best, as in better than its predecessor, The Dark Forest, all comes down to your expectations. If you're coming into Death's End hoping that Liu has somehow significantly improved in his ability to craft fully realized three-dimensional characters that complement the story rather than serve as mere plot devices, or if you're expecting Liu to have drastically toned down his clunky exposition, which often feels like a heavy-handed attempt to communicate scientific concepts to the reader, then you're setting yourself up for disappointment. Many of the Liu-isms that readers found polarizing within the first two books are still very much present here. However, I will say that although Liu does still indulge in his Liu-isms throughout this book, they're not as intrusive as they were before. But before I get too ahead of myself, what exactly is Death's End about? Well, if you're watching this video, hopefully you've already read the Dark Forest book, but essentially after Luoji made his Dark Forest power play at the end of that book, Trisolaris is now afraid of making an offensive move on Earth, lest Luoji reveal the Trisolaran fleet's location to other would-be conquerors from the Dark Forest of outer space. In turn, Earth's forces are also afraid of making an offensive move on Trisolaris, lest destruction also come down on them due to how geographically close they are to the Trisolaran fleet's location. So, in order to avoid a mutually assured destruction, both Earth and Trisolaris have begrudgingly agreed to be locked in a tense Cold War. However, before we even get to that pivotal point in the story, Death's End actually takes a page from the Dark Forest by taking us back to the early years of the Crisis Era, when humanity had just found out of Trisolaris' intent to eradicate all life on Earth. This time, however, we follow a new set of characters, mainly a young and aspiring scientist named Cheng Xin and a terminally ill wealthy man named Yun Tianming, as they each respectively try to navigate the chaos of the Crisis Era. These events unfold in Part 1 of Death's End and align chronologically with the final chapters of the Three-Body Problem and significant portions of the Dark Forest as well. It is only in Part 2 of this story when the story kind of moves beyond the timeline established by the Dark Forest and we enter into uncharted territory with these new characters. Now you might be wondering, how the heck is this all possible? Does Death's End truly cover 450 years worth of events within a singular volume? And the answer to that is yes. But much like the Dark Forest, Liu implies a little trick known within the publishing industry as cheating. Like the previous book's cast, a few of our Death's End characters cryogenically hibernate at various points throughout the story, allowing Liu to jump the story forward by decades or even centuries at a time. This allows Liu to stay affixed to the same core group of characters as they wake up within each new milestone within the story, without him having to constantly create a brand new batch of characters for each new time period. Now I know some readers might take issue with this storytelling approach, as Liu essentially sidesteps the complexities of having to build a multi-generational narrative through a constantly changing cast of characters. But like the last book, I actually don't mind this. We stick with Cheng Xin for a majority of this book, and the extended page time we spend with her across the centuries provides us with a much deeper insight into her personality. Plus, as Cheng Xin consistently wakes up in each new era, she kind of serves as a fish out of water for the story, essentially functioning as our proxy into each new era's unique sights and sounds. I personally prefer this over having the author throw characters away every 150 or so pages because they died of old age, and then him having to introduce a brand new set of main characters that I then have to work to become invested in. I already find the character change between each book to be jarring enough as it is, so preventing any further character changes within this book is personally much appreciated. Now on the topic of characters, I have to say that personally, in my opinion, I find Death's End's main characters to be the strongest in the series. No, these are still not your nuanced characters that you would find in something like The Blade itself or a Game of Thrones. But there is a noticeable improvement here in how Liu develops and utilizes his core cast throughout the story. Cheng Xin in particular stands out as her choices throughout this narrative resonate pretty deeply as the stakes kind of rise with each new era. Yun Tianming as well feels more human as his inner turmoil kind of reads more something like what an actual human being would convey. Now, the minor characters are still pretty one-note and forgettable, but they consist of such a small piece of the Death Zen pie. It's a nice change from the previous books where outside of Luoji, Yewinjie, or Da Shi, I didn't really care about anyone else in those books. Another area where Death Zen shows noticeable improvement over the previous books is in how it integrates its scientific concepts into the story. Yes, the science does still occasionally feel pretty dense, but it no longer sticks out like a sore thumb. Instead, Liu manages to weave complex theoretical and speculative scientific concepts into the narrative more naturally, often introducing them through brief dialogue before quickly moving on with the rest of the chapter. Only after the chapter ends does Liu expand and provide a deeper explanation for the concepts he introduced via a follow-up interlude chapter. This allows the reader to absorb the science without necessarily disrupting the previous chapter's flow. Now, as far as the story goes, I gotta say, Death Zen hooked me from the very beginning. I firmly believe that the first 3/4 of this book represent some of Liu's finest writing in the entire trilogy. With that said, I do think, in my subjective opinion, that Liu does stumble at the finish line. Now, I'm no astronomer or theoretical physicist, so perhaps someone who is more knowledgeable in those fields would have less of a problem with this ending. But a lot of the concepts that Liu introduces here in the final 10% of the book come straight out of left field with little to no build-up whatsoever. More importantly, the scientific developments that do take place within the last part of this book come at the expense of proper closure for some of our characters. How so? Well, let's get into spoilers and discuss! If you have not read Death Zen, skip ahead to the conclusion of this video and then come back to this video at a later date once you've finished Death Zen. Otherwise, stick around. So yeah, my biggest critique is that this book's part 6, aka Galaxy Era, is a big ol' fat, misshapen, unsatisfying mess. After the fantastic set piece of witnessing the entire solar system collapse into 2D space, thus sending human civilization for good, Cheng Xin and her BFF AA escaped to a star that Yun Tianming had gifted Cheng at the very beginning of the book. Both the solar systems collapsed into a painting, and Yun Tianming and Cheng Xin meeting at a star were effectively foreshadowed throughout the book, so no problems there. However, what I do find a little ridiculous is that once Cheng Xin manages to reach star DX3906, Liu all of a sudden decides that now is the time to flex his scientific muscles and throw a slew of last-minute scientific concepts at the reader. Black domain deathlines, micro-universes, including Yun Tianming's gifted pocket universe to Cheng Xin at the end of the book, the returners. These ideas all feel shoehorned into the narrative. If Liu's final destination for this story was for the universe to collapse into a singularity via the Big Crunch 19 million years into the future, couldn't he have accomplished this ending without tacking on all these unbuilt, last-minute scientific bells and whistles? Even more frustrating is how these last-minute scientific concepts completely derail the long-anticipated reunion between Cheng Xin and Yun Tianming on DX3906. No, I'm definitely not bitter about that one at all. I mean, I'm no romantic, but Liu's justification for robbing the reader of a proper resolution between these two characters essentially boils down to, uh-oh, Yun Tianming's curvature drive has accidentally triggered deathlines that we've only now just invented for the sake of the story. Guess Cheng will just have to wait these deathlines out on Wang Yifan's ship for 19 million years for some reason. We're orbiting planet Blue at light speed, said Wang Yifan, except the speed of light is now very slow. The deathlines ruptured? Yes, they spread out to cover the entire solar system. We're trapped here. Was it due to the disturbance from Tianming's ship? Perhaps. He didn't know the deathlines were here. When an author has to use the word perhaps to justify a plot device, that signals to me that this development was not very well thought out. Now I know that some might take issue with my complaints here and say, well, of course Cheng Xin and Yun Tianming were not going to end up together, advocate. This is a story about humanity's insignificance. Whether or not two humans kiss is of negligible consequence to the unforgiving universe. And to that I say, yes, while I admit that my desire for a Yun Cheng happy ending is subjective, and Liu has never shied away from highlighting the insignificance of humans within the cosmic scale, this is still a story. And within this story, Liu asks readers to emotionally invest in these characters and their relationships, a task he accomplished remarkably well within this book. For Liu to abandon an emotionally poignant resolution for the sake of plot convenience feels not only contrived, but also like a significantly missed opportunity. Now, if you further wanted to play devil's advocate to my advocate, by saying that Liu also needed to separate Chengxin and Yun Tianming in order to have a POV character alive for the universe's final collapse into a singularity, then I would say that Liu could still have very much done this without sacrificing the built-up Yun Cheng plotline. Liu Cixin is another available character in Wan Yifan to take on the role of Universe Death Observer 19 million years in the future. This man is already kind of a loner, so let him lone about for that moment, whilst letting Yun Tianming and Chengxin have their moment together, whilst also eliminating the need for plot unnecessary deathlines. Or, if Liu was determined to have Chengxin be that Universe Death Observer POV, why not have her wait on Planet Blue for Yun Tianming's arrival and later devise a way for them to live within a pocket universe somewhere outside of time? That way they could both travel 19 million years into the future and witness the universe's death together. I mean, we're already delving into the far fringes of scientific theory with this ending, so why not have a pocket dimension that can allow for such a resolution as well? But anyway, yes, I was not a fan of this ending, and it did leave a slight bitter aftertaste in my mouth. However, what about all the events that happened prior to this ending? Well, besides my usual gripes about Liu's mechanical writing style and his tendency to lean heavily on exposition, Death's End did indeed captivate me for most of its pages. Liu has crafted a deeply immersive narrative that draws the reader in, all beginning in a hospital where we meet our terminally ill, yet immensely wealthy man named Yun Tianming. This opening sets the tone for one of the novel's central themes, mortality. More specifically, how humans behave when confronted with their own mortality. And every time Liu delves into this theme, I am astounded by his ability to capture the complexities of human behavior when faced with death. Now, I shouldn't be too surprised in Liu's ability to expertly write about death. I mean, death is a universal topic that affects us all, but his writing during these moments feels deeply personal. It's a refreshing change of pace from the occasional slog of emotionally detached, exposition-heavy passages that sometimes weigh this text down. As Yun Tianming goes through the final steps of pressing the button on his euthanasia device 5 consecutive times, he is confronted with a flashback to a memory from a different time period in his lonely life. And as these flashbacks kind of build and build with each new memory, they ultimately culminate in his most treasured memories of his childhood love for Chengxin. And just as Tianming finishes up his last happy memory of his time with Chengxin, and he's about to press the button on his device for the 5th and final time, who should come bursting into his room but his very crushed Chengxin. Accompanied by a team of hospital workers, Chengxin races to disconnect the tubes and halt Yun's euthanasia process just as the chemicals were about to flow into his bloodstream. Wow. This entire sequence hit me like a gut punch. I mean, yes, there is some Deus Ex Machina here, but the raw, emotional, and honestly teary-eyed scene here kind of got me choked up a little bit. Not only was it impactful to read Yun Tianming's mindset as he prepared to take his own life, but the miraculous Hail Mary intervention by Chengxin, with both of them being reunited at the very last possible moment, felt like a happy fairy tale wish come true. And although the joy and potential romance of this moment is undercut by the follow-up chapters where it is revealed that Chengxin really only saved Yun Tianming because she wanted to send his brain into outer space, the moments leading up to Yun's 5th and final button press still resonate with me as probably some of the most emotionally resonant scenes of the entire trilogy. Now, on the topic of Chengxin, her character, while interesting, is definitely one I had to think twice about. Chengxin's name, which translates to Journey of the Heart, symbolizes human idealism and compassion. And I know this was intentional by Liu Cixin because, although her idealism is admirable, it often comes at a catastrophic cost to the human race. From our grander, more omniscient book reader perspective, it becomes painfully clear that both Chengxin's refusal to push the sword holder button, which would have revealed the Trisolaran fleet's location to potential hunter planets, and her whistleblowing on Wade's research into light-speed spaceflight and antimatter weaponry, while perhaps ethical, was disastrous and the wrong decision. However, from her limited perspective, where she's supposed to be a representation of human compassion, her decisions kind of become more understandable. Chengxin is written as a fundamentally hopeful person who believes that compassion can triumph over fear and destruction. While her idealism is extraordinarily naive, especially when viewed within the grander context of the harsh and unforgiving universe, her character serves as a reminder of the importance of that compassion. If she pushes the sword holder button, she essentially guarantees Trisolaris' destruction, but also gambles Earth's potential destruction given Earth's proximity to the Trisolaran fleet. Similarly, if she moves forward with Wade's secret lightspeed research and antimatter weaponry program, she may potentially save a fraction of the human race. However, she would also be militarizing Earth's elite, demonstrating that humans are no better than the fear-mongering governance that dominates other hostile planets. So while Cheng Xin's decisions ultimately led to the downfall of the human race, a pretty steep price to pay, they did preserve their moral essence, something that Liu consistently supports given his positive portrayal of Cheng Xin's character. This opposed to his framing of Wade's character in a more negative light, as his ruthless pragmatism contrasts sharply with Cheng's idealism. Cheng Xin's eyes were focused on Wade's right hand. The hand covered by a black leather glove held an old common-era gun that was pointing at Cheng Xin. "The bullet in here was designed to be shot underwater," said Wade. "It's supposed to last a long time, but it's been more than 270 years. Who knows if it will work?" That familiar smile, the one he wore when he was taking delight in the despair of others, appeared on his face. A flash, an explosion. Cheng Xin felt a hard punch against her left shoulder, and the force slammed her against the broken wall behind her. The thick ivy muffled much of the noise from the gunshot. Distant birds continued to chitter. "I can't use a modern gun," said Wade. "Every shot is automatically recorded in the public security databases now." His tone was as serene as it had been when he used to discuss routine tasks with her. "Why?" Cheng Xin didn't feel pain. Her left shoulder felt numb, as if it didn't belong to her. "I want to be the sword holder. You are my competitor, and you're going to win. I don't harbor any ill will toward you. Whether you believe me or not, I feel terrible at this moment." And this ultimately raises the question that Liu poses to the reader. Is it better for humanity to strive to become the best version of itself, embracing morality and compassion even at the risk of vulnerability to outside attacks? Or is it better to sacrifice those morals to ensure survival in an unjust Dark Forest universe? I mean, Liu clearly already takes a stand here given his negative portrayal of Wade's character, but the question remains interesting to ponder, especially in the broader context of human nature and the choices we might face if confronted with our own destruction. Of course, Death's End also has its fair share of stunning set pieces, such as humanity's great migration to Australia, the discovery of 4D space, and the jaw-dropping reveal of space cities in suspended gravity bunkering in the shadows of gas-giant planets. That one in particular left me in awe. But for me, it's the deeper questions about mortality and what it means to be human that truly define this novel, and what ultimately lingered in my mind long after the awe of the visual set pieces faded. And that, my friends, is Death's End. Yes, I do think the ending is unsatisfying, and yes, although I didn't cover it much in this review, Liu's prose continues to be largely expositional, but I do think the philosophical questions he poses, in combination with some fantastic sci-fi set pieces, help to elevate this story above its clunky text and make Death's End, in my opinion, the best book in the trilogy. But what say you? Let me know down in the comment section below of what you thought of this book and how it compares to the trilogy as a whole. I am aware that there is an unofficial fourth book in the Remembrance of Earth's Past series written by someone who isn't Liu Cixin. However, I'm not sure if it's canon or even worth picking up. So if you're interested in watching a video review on that book, definitely let me know. Likewise, let me know if you guys would be interested in me watching and reviewing the Three Body Problem Netflix TV show adaptation. I don't have high hopes for that one, but I'll keep an open mind if that's something you guys would be interested in. But until then, thank you so much, comrades, for watching this video, and I'll see you guys next time. The Advocate, out.